In this video, we will be learning about institutions and policy, what institutions are from a social perspective, and how we can use them for policy and policy analysis. So first and foremost, a social institution is a set of practices, or a rule, norm, or strategy. Institutions are social, they endure, they persist across time and space. They're distinct social practices that repeat. They constrain and facilitate behavior. They're also inconsistent and contradictory. And finally, they continuously change. Now, you might be wondering, what is the difference between an institution and an organization? Organizations are a set of institutional arrangements and participants with a common goal. And so organizations are formed subject to higher level institutions, and those institutions can be subject to even higher level institutions. In a way, institutions are what define organizations or give them bigger meaning. Like, we can have two groups of people which can be organizations, but what makes, for example, a sorority and not, say, a book club? It's their specific practices and cultures, aka their institutions. Institutions can be broad, like gender or law or education, but they can also be very specific, like, for example, the practice in colleges where everyone has an assigned seat. Institutions are also organized and shaped by other higher-level institutions, like how a tax is organized under the ideas and practices of policy instruments which are themselves shaped under the institution of law. One way I understand institutions is that they are like a path through the woods, in that it exists outside of any single person, and it's formed and changed and reinforced by individual action. Like every single time someone walks down a path, a dirt path, that path gets a little bit stronger. And they also constrain and shape individual action. Like if someone walks by a path, they're more likely to follow it, but it isn't a 100% requirement. An important part of understanding institutions and how they work is that institutions are organized with and permeated by power, and they have a legitimating ideology. So what is that? French philosopher Louis Althusser wrote that ideology represents the imaginary relationship of individuals to their real conditions of existence. So we can understand an institution's legitimating ideology as a construction of social reality that portrays present arrangements as natural or obvious. Now, what does this all have to do with policy? Institutions help us understand policy, and one way to do that is through what's called an Institutional Analysis and Design, or IAD, framework. So, to use this, we need to understand three key areas. One, the physical and material conditions of a community, like their production ability, finances, and capacities. Second is the community attributes, the participant knowledge, beliefs, attributes, and cultures. And finally, the rules in use, or the commonly used operating rules. So how people actually do something. Like an example, for speed limits, the actual posted rule is that you're not supposed to go above that limit, but how people actually do it is that most people go a little bit over the speed limit. Ultimately, institutions help policy analysts understand how and why people do things, and why people do things one way rather than another. You can make a policy to get horses to water, but if you want to make them drink, you need to understand why horses drink, when horses drink, and why they drink one way rather than a different way. So, here are some exercises to help you apply an institutional perspective to your policy analysis. Start by picking a policy. How does that policy work as an institution? What are the practices? How do those practices stay consistent over time, and how do they change? Second, think about the community or communities that this policy would target. What are the physical and material conditions of that community. What can they actually do? What will they actually do? What are the community attributes? What is a specific culture? What are the beliefs? What are the values? And finally, what are the rules in use of that community? What are the commonly used rules? What do they actually do? Hopefully, that will help you get a better institutional idea of your policies.